Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we're going to continue with our series on building GraphRAG applications. So in this video, we're going to go ahead and build a backend API and then take everything that you have done so far and then put it into a backend API. And then you're going to have this API containerized using Docker. Okay, so everything that you have done so far, all the chains, all the tools, all the AI agents, you're going to now make them into use by building an API that other services can consume. In this case, you're going to go in the next video, you're going to go ahead and I'm going to show how to build a Streamlit application, which is just a UI application to consume this API that you're going to be building in this video. Okay, so most of the things I'm not going to go into depth about them, like for example, Docker, FastAPI, those are completely different things on their own, different courses on their own. But if you wish to cover those, I have videos on the channel. I have a whole series of building APIs with FastAPI from the bottom up. Okay, so if you're really interested in how to build APIs, you can check that video out. For containerization, I also have a video showing you how to containerize fast API applications using Docker, so you can also check out that video. So I'm going to go ahead and build this, but I'm not going to go ahead and go it's very specifically into one specific area. Okay, so having said that, let's move on to the project overview. So in the previous videos, you've been looking at basically we have done the manual pipeline, the ETL pipeline, the basics of LangChain. We went over natural language processing, building agent, right? And then now we are the part six, which is going to go ahead and build our fast API backend server or backend service that's going to be consumed by our Streamlit application, which you're going to be building in video in part seven, which is the next video. Okay, so yeah, that's basically what we have done so far, and that's what you're going to do in this video, building the back-end application. So this is what we're going to be covering in this video. We're going to go ahead and how to build a synchronous API using FastAPI. You take different techniques for containerization with Docker. You're also going to be using Docker Compose, okay, to run our different containers. Okay, so you're going to also learn about structuring fast API application for scalability in mind. Okay, so integrating the AI agent, the tools, the different chains, and everything that you've learned in the previous sessions, you're going to go ahead and learn how to integrate them into an endpoint of our fast API application so they can be used by other third-party services. Okay. Okay, so this table of content is what we're going to be covering in this video. We're going to go ahead and cover installation and setup, exploring packages and exporting packages to our requirement file. We're going to work with creating the chains, updating our env file with some new information, creating tools, creating agents, creating the chat endpoint on our API, and then we're going to go ahead and test it all and make sure everything works. So basically, everything that you're doing in this video, you've already done in the previous section. So we're going to do more of copy pasting stuff, like the agents, copy paste the chains, copy paste the different tools. You're going to copy paste, right? The only part you're going to focus on is how to put it into a fast API application, and also how to containerize this application, right? So yeah, that's basically what you're going to go ahead and do. So the first thing is going to you're going to go ahead and look at is installation and setting up. So for installation and setting up, you're going to go ahead and run a bunch of these commands to be able to create the directory structure and all those things, right? So let's jump into it. So I'm going to go ahead and do an ls. You can see this is my current directory. So let me check if I have VS Code open. I don't have VS Code open, so I'm going to go ahead and open my VS Code or any editor that you're comfortable working with. I'm comfortable with VS Code. So once that's running, I'm just going to go ahead and position it right here, so that's much easier for me to navigate between these windows. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to go back into the terminal. You can do this process right here if you want creating the folders and the subfiles and subfolders. You can do all of that in VS Code, but I'm going to be using the command. So first, what I'm going to do, you're going to create a folder. So I'm going to call it chatbot underscore backend folder. You're going to change directory into this specific folder. So you can see this folder right now is completely empty, and you can also view it right here. It's completely empty. So good. So once you have done that, we're going to go ahead and create a couple of things inside of this folder that you have created. So this you're going to do, I said you're going to set up our first API application with scalability in mind, so that you can scale it up in the future. So I've also made a whole video on how to set up building fast API applications with scalability in mind. I also wrote articles about it. So I'm going to go ahead and skip, go really fast on that section, but you can check out that video on the channel's main page. You can also check out the article about it on my Medium page. Okay, So let's look at my Medium pages. Something I want to show you guys, which is the directory structure, right? So we are currently in this directory. So we're going to go ahead. We are currently, we have created, let me just go all the way. I don't want this section. We'll come back to this just in a second. So good. So instead of our chatbot backend directory, so we're going to go ahead and create this kind of folder. So we're going to create a folder called CI/CD, infrastructure, services, and tools. So let's go ahead and create those folders. So to create, I'm going to say mkdir. It's called CI underscore CD infrastructure, and also we're going to create tools and services. So services is going to house all our different services. Okay, the CI/CD is going to house our Docker stuff. Okay, so it's just continuous integration and delivery. And then for infrastructure, you're going you can keep different things in there, like Terraform files and other stuff like that, right? So yeah, that's basically it. So once we have those done, I think we're ready to go. So instead of a CI/CD pipeline, sorry, for a folder, we're going to create another folder called Docker. You're going to create one file in there called Docker file. Okay, so I'm going to go in there. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to change directory into my CI/CD folder. I'm going to create a folder called Docker, just like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and change directory into my Docker folder. I'm going to create a file. Okay, use a touch command. Just say touch. You're going to say Docker file, just like that. Okay, so if I go back in here, you can also do the same things inside of your VS Code if you wish to, right? So feel free to use anything that you're comfortable working with. So once we have that, now let's focus now attention on this folder right here, the tools folder and the infrastructure folder. So I'm going to go into the infrastructure folder, create a file in there. This file is going to be called underscore init underscore.py, and I'm going to go into the tools folder, create the same file, underscore init underscore.py file. Good, awesome. So once we have those done, let's look into the service folder and let's see what we need. So we're going to create a folder called v1. So we can have many versions of our service, version 1, version 2. That's just like the way, that's just the way I like structuring stuff. You can have a different structure if you wish to. Okay, so I'm just going to go in here and I'm just going to create a folder. I'm going to call it v1, which is version 1 of our application. And instead of that, I'm going to go ahead and create a couple of things in the couple of files, right? So we're going to have a couple of folders. First, let's start with the folders. So we're going to have the agents folder and the schemas folder and the utils folder. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go ahead and create a folder. This folder is going to be called agents. In here, we're going to create another folder again called schemas. And then we're going to create another folder called utils, just like that. Okay, so in here I'm going to go ahead and create the underscore init file. So underscore init underscore.py file, and I'm going to do the same thing for schemas. Create a file underscore init underscore.py, and I'm going to do the same thing in schemas. So I'm going to go and say underscore init underscore.py file. Awesome. So once I have that set up, let's go ahead and see what else we need. So we need to create a file called main.py file. Okay, yeah, main.py file and requirement.txt. So let's go ahead and create those files. But before we go ahead, you also need another underscore init underscore.py file in the v1 folder. So this is in the v1 folder, so you can see the part of it. So services v1, and that's where you have that file. Okay, so you can see the part right here. Awesome. So once we have that, I'm going to go ahead and create a folder, another file, sorry, called main.py, which is going to house our basically house the backend application. So the main part of it, the endpoints, like the different endpoints, we're going to put them in here. Okay. So once we have that done, we also need to create a requirement.txt file. Okay, so we also need to go ahead in here and just say create a file. And it's going to be requirement.txt. Okay, so that's basically it. So requirement.txt file is going to be in there. So once we have all this done, we are ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and close all these other windows, just all these other files that have been opened up, close all of them. Okay, awesome. So once we have all those closed, we are ready to go. So we need to install a couple of things. So we need to go ahead and install this right here. So we need to create a virtual environment, and then we have to activate the virtual environment. So the virtual environment needs to be in service 1 folder. Okay, so I'm going to go into service 1 and I'm going to go ahead and create that virtual environment in there. Okay, so change directory into services version 1. Okay, so once I'm in there, I'm going to simply do python 3 hyphen m vnv and then vnv, just like that. So that's going to go ahead and create Python virtual environment inside of version 1 folder. Okay, so the different versions can have different packages. So each version will have its own, each version of the application would have its own virtual environment. Okay, so once you have, you can activate it by saying source venv /bin /activate, just like that, and then you activate the virtual environment. And you can know it's activated if you can see the name of the virtual environment in there, which was previously not there, right? So yeah, that shows that your virtual environment is activated. So we need to go ahead and install this right here. Okay, so we need to install pip install and then FastAPI standard. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So pip install, this is going to be in quotes. Okay, so I'm going to say FastAPI standard, just like that, and you make sure you close this off. So we run that, and that's going to go ahead and install the packages FastAPI into our virtual environment. Okay, so once that's being done, you also need to go ahead and install all these packages inside of our virtual environment. So this is now for the AI part, right? Working the agents and stuff like that. We need to go ahead and install all this. Okay, and just for the sake of it, there's no to right here. It says OpenAI. There is no to right here, so ignore that too. Okay, so there's just OpenAI and not OpenAI 2. Okay, that's a typo. Okay, I have all these commands right here in case you want to find them. I have them. Let me just scroll and show you where these commands are. So these commands are right here. So let's copy this command. And once FastAPI is done installing, you're going to go ahead and install this. And then once we have it installed, you're going to go ahead and update our requirements.txt file. Okay. Okay, so let's wait for that to get done. Okay, awesome. So I have my FastAPI already installed. So once I have it installed, I'm going to go ahead and clear the terminal and then simply paste in the command to install these dependencies. And also I need to update something right here. So let me just run these commands one after the other. You can chain them together, but let's just run them one after the other. So I'm going to go ahead and change this because it's going to be OpenAI, right? OpenAI, not OpenAI 2. So just OpenAI, and then let's run that command. So this is going to go ahead and install all these packages: LangChain, OpenAI, LangChain community, LangChain hub, python.env, and Neo4j package into our Python virtual environment. Okay, so we need, from here, we need to go ahead and give it some bit of time for it to go ahead and install all these packages. So once all these packages are installed, then we can run this last command to update our requirement.txt file, so that the requirement.txt file has all the latest packages. Okay, awesome. So once that's being installed, this is the part where we're going actually to do the exporting of our requirement.txt, exporting the dependencies into our requirement.txt file. Okay, so while this is being done, we can continue. Let's move on to creating chains, because I don't want to waste your time. Let's move on to creating chains. So we need to create two main chains, just like we did before. We have the employee chain and the cipher chain. So if you haven't followed this series from the very beginning, you can go back and watch the very first video. So the first thing you need to do is to create these chains, and you're going to use this chain to create tools, and then the tools to create agents. So we're going to we have always had two main tools from the beginning of the series. Sorry, the two main chains, the employee chain and the cipher chain. So let's go ahead and actually create these chains. Okay, so let me just scroll. Everything is right here. So I just want to show you everything so that we know we are not really confused about anything. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and drag. I'm going to also keep this link available for you guys in case you guys want to access this link, this endpoints. Okay, I mean this article. So creating the chain is actually very easy. So we're going to, instead of EVNV, we're going to have a folder called chains. That's, we're going to have two main files: the cipher query chain and the employee query chain, right? So let's go ahead and actually do those chains. So I'm going to go in here and the root of my ear. Let me just close this other, minimize them. So I'm going to go into version 1, and instead of version, I'm going to create another folder called chains, and I'm going to create a file called _init _py. And then you're going to have two main chains. The first one is a cipher, the cipher query chain, and the employee query chain. So I'm going to go in here, create another file, and this file will be called cipher query chain.py file, and then press enter. And you're also going to have another one which is called the employee query chain.py. So employee query chain, copy that. I'm going to go back in here and then add another file called this, and then say .py, just like that. Okay, press enter. So great. So we have these two files created right here. So once these files are created right here, I'm going to go up, basically copy the code and paste it into this files, because it's just everything that you've been covering in the previous video. So it is nothing new about it, right? So let's go ahead and actually do that. So I have the code right here. Let's go ahead and get the code. So the first one is a query, query cipher chain. So I'm going to go ahead and simply copy all this. Let me just grab it from the bottom and then copy all the way up. So copy all this. Copy all this. You're going to paste it in cipher query chain.py. So copy that, go into cipher query chain.py, and then paste the file in there and make sure that you hit save. And then you're going to do all this you've covered in the previous video. So it's nothing new. I'm just basically copy pasting stuff. It's really nothing new. It's just from the same things that you've done previously. Okay, so I'm going to go into the employee chain, and the code is going to be available on GitHub. So you can also follow GitHub and copy paste stuff if you want to. So I'm also going to go ahead and create a second chain, which is the employee query chain. And this is the code for the employee query chain. So I'm going to go ahead and simply copy all that. So I need to scroll all the way up. So copy that, move into here, and simply paste it in here. Okay, so save that as well. So now that you have copied and pasted in that content inside of our employee underscore query chain, that's all we need to do for the chain. So we have the chains created. Let's see what's next. Actually, let's check on the to check on the installation to see, make sure everything is installed. Yeah, perfectly. So clear terminal. We'll come back to building the API just in a second, but for now, let's have all the AI components in place, and then we'll start building on the API. Okay, so now let's check on what's next. So now we're going to go ahead and update our requirements our .env file. So basically, you're going to create another env file inside of here. So I'm going to go ahead and simply add a file, and I'm going to say .env. So this file is in this part right here, backend and chatbot underscore backend, and we have a file called .env. So this file is going to house the same content as our old env. So just give me a second. Let me just copy and paste the content from our old env into our new .env file. Okay, and then I'll be back recording. Okay guys, so I'm back recording, and I've already updated my env file. I can't open it right now because it has my requirements and other secrets, right? It has my other secrets inside, so I can show like my API keys and other stuff like that, right? So good. So we've updated our env file, and basically what you're simply updating is just stuff like this, like the Neo4j URL, the Neo4j username, the password, the arrow instance name, and your OpenAPI key, right? That's basically what you're trying to update. So once we have that update done, let's move on to creating tools. So let's see what we need to create tools. So again, it's just the same code that we had previously. So we're going to create a folder for basically working with tools, and then simply have all those pasted in there. So we have already a folder called tools. Basically, we're going to keep all our AI tools in there. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and simply copy all this. So copy this, and it's going to be employee query tool.py. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to add it in here. So here, right here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a file. I'm going to call it employee underscore query underscore tool.py. Okay, let me get that spelling right. So employee query tool.py, and make sure I have that pasted in there, and I have that saved. And let's do the last one, and the last tool is going to be the general query tool.py. So I'm going to go ahead and create a file in here. It's going to be called general underscore query underscore tool.py. Okay, and then have that pasted in here. So general query tool.py. Okay, so once we have that in there, we are ready to go. So that's all we need for our tools. Okay, so that's all we need for our tools. Okay, so once we have the tools created, now we have the chain. We use the chain to create the tools. Now we're going to go ahead and create the basically you have done the tools, right? So we use the chain to create the tools. So now we're going to go ahead and create our agent, and we're going to use the tool that we created from the chains to create the agent. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have all the code right here. So we're going to go basically have another folder called agent, which you already have. So we're going to have a file called main underscore agents.py, and basically we're going to have this content inside of it. So I'm going to go ahead and simply copy this content right here. Again, all this code is available on GitHub, and it's already stuff that you already done throughout the series. So it's just something that you've already done already. So I'm going to call this one main underscore agent.py. Okay, so let me just get this name of the file. So main agent.py, and inside of this file, you're going to go ahead and paste that, and then simply save the code. So once we have that pasted in there, that's all we need to do for basically our agent, right? And you've already done all this in the previous tutorial, so it's just basically copy pasting code, right? So let's move on to other stuff and see what's next on the list. So now we have done that, you're going to go ahead and simply create an API endpoint that users can basically access this agent and do different stuff with this agent, right? So let's go ahead and actually do that. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is basically, let's go back in here and let's see what we're going to do right here. So basically, we're going to go ahead and start creating the Dockerization process. So the first we're going to go ahead and do is you're going to go under our Docker, basically, okay, instead of our main.py file, we're going to go ahead and simply copy this code and then simply have it in there. So I'm going to go into main.py file, and this is just something to do with FastAPI. So basically, you have imported a FastAPI class. You've used the class to create an instance. You're using the instance now to create different routes. In this case, you have only a get route. That's all we need to do. So once we have that done, we can simply run this. So if I go ahead and do ls, if I do a uvcon main and then up hyphen reload and then run this, is going to go ahead and simply start the fast API application. I'm going to simply copy this. Sorry, I'm going to simply copy this right here. Copy this, copy, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to paste it in this new tab. Paste this right here and then run this. So you can see you're getting back a hello world, which is right here, right? So if I zoom in, you can see you're getting back a simple hello world. So that's basically what we need to create our API. Now, what we're going to go ahead and do now is learn how to Dockerize this API so we can run it within a Docker container. So to do that, the first we're going to go ahead and do is a couple of things, right? Um, so we're going to go ahead and create this. This is just a formatting using RAF. So if you know what RAF is, it's a formatting tool. So if you want to use RAF, it's easy to do. Just simply copy this, the link to this article, and in the GitHub repository. The GitHub repository is going to be in the description. So you just simply copy this, and you go ahead and create a .vs code file. So sorry, a folder. So you just create a folder, call it .vs code. And then once you have that, you're going to create a file in there called settings.json, and then simply paste in whatever you have copied and then save that. Okay. So that's basically what you need to do to have RAF. And also once you have that, you can go into the extensions tab, and then you basically search for RAF here and then simply install RAF. Okay. So let's click on this and let's click on install to install RAF. Okay. So that's just a quick setup of RAF. Okay. So if you for those of you who want to use RAF and formatting tools, that's basically how you use RAF, and these are basically the settings on how to control the different formatting. Okay, so now once we have that, now let's move on into Dockerization. So we're going to be using a Python Slim image to run this. Okay, and this is just Docker stuff. So I'm not going to, this video is not about how Docker works. So I'm not going to go ahead and explain to you all this in depth, right? So we're just creating a working directory, installing our dependencies, copying everything over, copying all the dependencies, installing all the dependencies, copying everything from our current directory into our source, and then we're having environment variable path, and basically you're running uvcon running and then running the application just like we run it right now in the browser. Okay, so once we have that, I'm going to go ahead and simply copy all this, and you're going to go ahead and create a file called folder called docker. Instead of that file, you're going to create a FastAPI.docker file. Sorry. So once I have that, go back in here. We're going to go into this, go into the Docker folder. So I'm going to go actually delete this file. Just delete this file for now. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it, move it to trash, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new file in here. I'm going to call it FastAPI.docker file, just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and simply paste in the content right here. Yeah, so this is a content for running our Docker service, okay, for running our FastAPI service in Docker container. Okay, so this container will be ran using a Docker compose file. Okay, so once we have that done, again, I'm not going to go into depth about this because this is not like a Docker specific tutorial. So I hope that you have a basic understanding of Docker. If you don't understand all this, I have a whole video teaching you how to Dockerize a FastAPI application, so you can check out that video. Okay. Okay, so once we have this done, now we need to create a Docker compose file and then have all this content inside of it. So I'm going to go ahead and create a Docker compose file in the root directory, right? So I'm going to create a Docker file. So it's going to be docker-compose.yaml, just like this, and then simply paste in this content. So basically, we are basically creating a service called FastAPI. We have build context is the current working directory. The Docker file that you're using to run the Docker container is from CI/CD Docker file, and then we have the FastAPI.docker file. That's the Docker file they're using to run this container. We have a container name called FastAPI_app. Our host name is basically network mode is host, and then you're running it on port 8000. So you're opening port 8000 and binding it to port 8000 on the Docker container. So this is on the host machine, and this is on a Docker container. Creating a volume that's going to bind all this. So they're creating the volume so that whenever there is a change, our application can reload. So when you're building the application, right? Sometimes you make changes, you don't want to go ahead, stop the container and then run the container again. So that's why we're creating the bind, right? So that whenever we have changes on the host machine folders, it reflects on the Docker container folders, right? So that's basically it. And then we are using reload right here so that it reloads every time there is a change, right? So good. So if let me just show you how this works. So if I go into main.py file, so you can see right now, this is our API. So if I go ahead and change something, hello world, this is code with Prince. If I go back in here, you can see it's going to reload because we have the reload flag running, right? That's what reload does. So every time you make a change, it's going to automatically reload. So if I go back in here and I try to refresh this, so you can see it has that being reloaded. Okay, so once that's out of the way, now we can move on to running our application from the using the Docker Compose file. So the command to do that is actually very simple. You just say Docker Compose app. First, you have to build the image first. Okay, so copy this, and then finally go ahead and build the image. But before we build the image, I haven't updated my requirement.txt file. So I'm gonna say pip freeze into requirement.txt file. So run that command and okay, no file like that. So I'm going to says let's see, pip try to use sudo, so pip freeze into requirement.txt file, and then let's put in my password and let's see if that's going to work. Okay, perfectly, it works. So let's check our requirement.txt file to see if it has all the dependencies. Perfect. So now we are good to go. So once we have this, then we're going to go ahead and simply use docker compose app and then hyphen build to build that container app. So build and let's run that. So it's going to go ahead and build the container, install all the dependencies and everything. Okay, so this can take a bit of time. So just be patient, give it a bit of time and let that run through. And once that's done, we'll continue. I'll be back recording and then we'll continue or from there. So let's give this a bit of time. It can take a bit of time to install all those dependencies and do all that. So just be patient. Yes, guys. So I noticed I think I did a mistake. Okay, when trying to export this requirement. So make sure that the virtual environment is activated, and then do pip freeze, and then pipe it into requirement.txt. So there were some packages that were in there that were not supposed to be there. So I go ahead and simply re-exported the requirement.txt file, and then now I'm trying to install it again. And currently there are no issues so far, so everything is working so good. So yeah, just make sure that you go ahead and re-export your requirement.txt file while making sure that your virtual environment is activated. Okay. So if your virtual environment is not activated, then it will export all the requirements in your global Python environment, which is leading to issues. So make sure that your virtual environment is activated and do pip freeze and then pipe it into requirements.txt file. Okay, so that's what I've done, and I'm just waiting for this to go ahead and finish installing. Once it's done, I'll be back recording. Okay. Okay, guys, so welcome back. So you can see now we have our basically all our dependencies installed and our Docker container is up and running. So let's actually go ahead and test it out. Okay. So I'm just going to navigate into my browser, and I'm inside of my browser right here. I'm just going to hit on refresh, and you can see now it's loaded up there. So I can go to /docs on it. So I can give /docs, and then I can be able to see the Swagger UI right here. So this is basically the Swagger UI, right? Let me just zoom out a bit so you can see this the health check and try this out, and then execute this. You should get back hello world. This is codewithprince, right? So that's basically how the application works, and looks like this, right? So at 100%, it looks like this, and I just zoom in so that you guys can see much clearer. Okay, so that's basically how the application basically it's set up. So now once you have all that, I can go ahead and close all these files, close all this, close all this, close all this. Now we can go ahead and integrate the AI part, right? The route for the chatbot right into our API. So let's go into main.py file. Okay, let's go back in here and see what we have listed in here. So good, we have it running. We have been able to access it. You have tried it out. Everything works fine. Yeah, so you can run it by using Docker Compose app without the build part. Okay, so if you want to rebuild again, you can use the Docker Compose build, but mostly these layers are saved. If you work with Docker, you understand it works in different layers, and once you run a layer, it gets saved, right? So, and all that logic. Anyway, this is not a Docker call, so let's continue. So now all our focus is now just to integrate it into our API backend, right? So we have created the agents already. So now we're going to go ahead and integrate it into our endpoint. So to do that is actually very, very simple to do. First, you have to do is to import the agent from the main agent file. So I'm going to go into main.py file, and you're going to go ahead and import it right here. So paste the code. So from services version 1 agents, which is this file, this folder, you're going to go ahead and say .main agent file, import the agent executor, and the agent executor is this one right here. Okay, so we're going to use agent executor to create to call that agent basically. Okay, so once we have it there, we have this and this code right here, and this is a code that gets executed whenever you make an API call to /chat. Basically, we call the AI agent, and then basically do all this pre-processing and then get back the response. That's all we need to do. So I'm going to hit save on this. So once this is saved, I'm going to go into my terminal. Let's see if it's going to automatically pick it up. Go back in here. Let's refresh this and minimize this. Okay, so that endpoint doesn't show up for now. So I'm going to go back in here and let me stop this API. So once I have that container stopped, I'm going to go ahead and restart it again, and hopefully it picks up all those changes you have just implemented so far. Okay, so once it's running, we can go ahead. Let's wait for it to start up. Okay, you can actually do it without having to use the build command. It also work. Okay, so once I have it, then I'm going to go ahead, minimize this, try to refresh. Okay, so now let's look and see why this is being we're getting this error. Okay, so we look like we're having an error from this section right here, importing. The importation is failing. So let's take a look at this. So this in this file right here. Actually, I have the file open, so look at it. So we are failing the import is right here. We're failing these imports. So let me look at the tools file. Okay, these are the tools files and everything is fine. Okay, so let me look at the init file. I think we need to import this file. So there are two ways you can solve this error. We can solve it by updating this piece of code, which I don't want to do. So let's go into the init file and update the, let's go and update the init file instead, which is close this one up, and I'm going to open the init set of the tools right here. Okay, so we need to update it right here. So I'm going to say from dot employee. I'm going to go ahead and import employee QA. I'm also going to say dot from general. I'm going to import general QA tool. So save that. Once I have that saved, you can also go ahead and do from and do the dot all. You can also do this. This also work fine. Okay, so once we have this done, let's stop this and clear the terminal, and let's restart this without building it again. So let's just restart it. Okay, so now it's up and running. So let's go ahead and try to refresh this, and we still have an error. It says that from tools import employee QA tools, cannot import the name employee QA tools. So since this picture is not working, what I simply went ahead and did is just simply restart the Docker container. So to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and simply restart the Docker container and make sure that this time you're using the build. So I was trying to run it without the build and I was getting the same error. So just make sure that you run it with the build hyphen build flag so that it works. Okay, so just run it with the hyphen build so that it picks up those new changes and then runs those new changes. Okay, so yeah, that's basically it. So once it's running, let's check if it's running. Let's wait for it to run. So you should see a status telling us that application process completed. So you should be able to from that point on be able to access the API. So if let me just go ahead and let's try to refresh it right now. We shouldn't be able to access it. And if you go back in here, let's see, the application start is not complete. So let's give this a bit of time and let's keep on refreshing. See if this would work. Okay, not sure. Okay, so it started, the application start completed, but we got an error. It's the error says value error. Okay, so this is a very common error, and you can read through this error. I don't want really to waste your time, but basically we need to set a permission to our database, because we are giving the AI access to our database. The AI can do things like read, write, update stuff, and a lot of things can happen if you give a whole access to the database to an AI system. Like these are AI systems. They are prone to making errors. They're prone to hallucinating. They might generate a code. Someone might inject a prompt, right? A prompt injection that might wipe out your whole graph database, right? A lot of crazy things can happen. So you might, if you can, if in Neo4j, if you for each key, right? For each key that you have, you can set permission for that specific key. Like this key can only be used for read operations, right? So you can go ahead and set those permissions in Neo4j for your own keys so that your application does not get hacked or someone doing something crazy to your application, right? So in this case, you're only going to say allow dangerous requests because it's just a demo. I don't want to really to go into setting permissions in Neo4j. But if you're building a real world application, what you'd want to do is to go to Neo4j and set permissions. Okay, So for now, to solve this error, I'm just going to hold Control C, copy this, and I'm going to go into our cipher chain right here. And what you're going to go ahead and do is in here, you're going to go ahead and simply add that command, which is just copy, and you're going to say it's going to be true. That's all we need to do. And once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and save the file and clear the terminal, and then let's run this one more time. Okay, so once it's running this time around, let's go ahead and wait for the API to start. Once the API starts, you're going to ask it a question that's going to make it to use the cipher chain. Another question is going to make it to use the embedding, right, the employee QA tool, which is just for vector search. So we're going to ask it a very employee very specific employee information, such as tell us more about the vice president of the company. And then for the cipher chain, you can ask it a very general question, like how many shippers we have in the company. Okay, so the application status completed. So I'm going to go back in here, and once I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. Once it's refreshed, we should see the chat interface, right? Awesome. So click on try, and then go in here. Let's ask a very general question. So how are you doing? Okay, so if I run this question, I don't expect it to use any tool. So it says here, there, how can I assist you today? Perfect. So now I'm going to go ask it a question. Uh, tell me about the total number. Okay, let's ask it. Tell me about the vice president, right? President of the company. So the vice president of the company, it should give us more information on the vice president of the company. They should force it to use the employee QA2, which is going to use the vector search to find out information about the president. So you can see, give us information about the president, the vice president of the company, speaks French and Italian, blah blah, and all these universities and all these details about the vice president. You can see all this, right? Awesome. So you can see which tool it uses. It uses the employee QA tool, right? Awesome. So let's ask a question to make it use the other tool, okay, which is the the cipher tool. So let's ask it how many shippers do we have in the company, just like that. And let's ask it a specific question of how many shippers do we have in the company. So we from the last tutorials, we know we have 3 shippers in the company. So the number of shippers is 3. And then yeah, that's basically it. So give us the number of shippers, 3. Awesome. So that's basically correct, and that's the correct answer. So that's really all about building the API. So now we have basically integrated our basically our AI agent into an API endpoint that can be consumed by other applications. Okay, so now you can run this Docker container. It can be consumed by a React application, a Streamlit application, a Next.js application, a Vue application, an Angular application, and all these front-end applications can consume now your AI agents, right? So now you can take this container and deploy it in an environment on the cloud or on the server, and then have these agents be able to but basically create an endpoint whereby people can access these AI agents. Yes, guys, so that's all bring us the end of this video, and I hope we have gone over testing already. So in the next video, we're going to look at building a Streamlit application, which is a front-end application that's going to be consuming this specific API, right? So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you found this really helpful. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and build a Streamlit application and then wrap up this whole series. Okay, so guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, the easiest way you can support the channel is by liking the video. You can support the channel. You can drop me super chats and other stuff like that. But if you want to connect with me, you can connect with me on Medium, where I write articles like this kind of article right here. I write articles about, even this video has its own article on Medium. You can follow me on YouTube as well at codewithprince. You can follow me on Twitter at prince_cramper, and you can follow me on LinkedIn at prince_cramper. So if you have any project ideas, you have any work that you want to get done, basically on RAGs, GraphRAG systems, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am much faster to reply to you through LinkedIn. You can follow me at prince_cramper, right? So guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you found value from this video. See you in the next one, and keep safe.